very good morning to one and all, and I welcome you all for this fourth day of advanced training program organized by Praisal Foundation, Pharmaceutical Royal International Society, India. As we all know, COVID-19 pandemic has affected educational system worldwide, leading to nearly total closure of all schools, institute, and colleges. In this time of crisis, well-rounded and effective educational practice is what needed for the capacity building of young minds. So hence, Praisal Foundation has taken up a step in organizing an international webinar on advanced training program, which helps to break a barriers between the educational system and continuous learning. In this advanced training program, we bring a eminent and expertised speakers to talk on the different topics based on the students' need and which helps to improve their skills. And today, it's my great pleasure and my privilege to welcome our respected speaker, Professor G.T. Kulkarni, Professor and Joint Head of MIT Institute of Pharmacy, MIT University, Noida. Welcome you, sir.
Thank
And
you.
welcome, sir. It's my great honor to welcome our convener, Professor Preeti Tagde, founder of Praisal Foundation, for organizing this informative session. We welcome you, ma'am. And I welcome all the dignitaries, directors of respected institute, faculty members, and research scientists and students for this advanced training program. Thank you, ma'am. With this brief, I would like to take up a call for Professor Preeti Jagde to brief about today our speaker. Thank you, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to welcome our resource person, Dr. G.T. Kulkarni sir, all the principals, directors, teachers, research scholars who have spared their valuable time on this advanced training program. And we have planned this advanced training program in the view of how we can deal, how we can learn something new for our research enhancement. And from day one, we have started various series of training, from nanoparticular drug delivery system to the nano emulsion, ethosomes, and today we are just going towards as a gastroretentive drug delivery system. I'm just sharing my screen. Anyways, first resource person of today's session, Dr. G.T. Kulkarni, who is the Professor, Joint Head, Amity Institute of Pharmacy, Amity University, Noida. Sir is having a vast experience of 25 years in research and academics. He is having a citation of 1,746 and total impact factor of 103. He has worked as guest editor of Natural Product Radiant, American Eurasian Network for Scientific Information, Jordan. Sir is working as an editorial and review board of many more than 30 national and international pharmaceutical journals of published by Elsevier, Bantam, Springer, ACS, Info, Taylor and Francis, and he is the brand ambassador of Bantam Science and Journals. He is a member of various societies, APTI, SPR, PRISM. He is also awarded with Scientist Award. Sir is having awarded with the Pharma Ratna Award in 2019, and it's really an honor that today we have a very eminent personality with us. Let me give brief about his career. He completed his B Pharm and M Pharm from Gulbarga University, Karnataka. He did his doctorate from Tamil Nadu, Dr. MGR Medical University, Chennai. He's having M Pharm dissertation guided 50, and he is having a patent of more than 14. It's really a privilege, sir, you are in this platform, and sir is also awarded with gold medal in 2010 APTI Best Paper Award. He is also awarded by 36th IPC Award for securing first position in B Pharma. He is awarded with IDMA Best Paper Award 2002, and very renowned personality today we have with us. So I welcome you once again, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I will start sharing my screen now.
Okay, sir, sure.
Thank you, Dr. Preeti. Today, I am going to give a lecture on gastroretentive drug delivery system. Here, what I have planned is usually lecture means it will be normally more theory, less practical orientation. But in this case, today what I have planned is slightly different. It will be a little bit introduction about gastroretentive drug delivery, why we have to go for this gastroretentive drug delivery, and some basic concepts about this gastro retention and why it should be done, followed by some of the case studies which we have worked out earlier. Our group has worked. So this is the total thing, at least regarding two dosage forms which we had developed. I'm going to talk about them, how we developed and how we evaluated, and what was the basis for selecting a specific drug for developing a specific dosage form for gastro retention. So if we come to the first thing, introduction of any drug delivery system, usually as we know, oral drug delivery or oral administration is the most commonly used and most popular form of administration, route of administration, because here patient's compliance is very high. Patient can have self-medication. They can get the thing administered themselves. If it is in case of injection or something else, they need a specialized assistant, either a doctor or nurse or pharmacist, somebody is needed to give an injection. Whereas in this case, they can take the medication themselves. Hence, it is most popular route of administration. And when we are talking about oral drug delivery, two things are there. One is conventional, other one is controlled release and sustained release. In most of the conventional release systems, the rate of absorption, extent of absorption, they actually vary, because usually when we say 3 tablets a day, it means that we are administering every dose once half life of the previous dose has reached. Okay, at half life, according to the theory of biopharmaceutics and pharmacokinetics, at every half life we have to administer a dose. This is called as dosage regimen. And here, usually in case of this conventional therapy, normally when we administer a dose, the concentration in the plasma will go high and then it will come down. Then by the time we administer second dose, again it will go up, again it will come down. Like this, peaks and valleys can be seen in the plasma concentration versus time curve. And another important thing here, what we have to consider is the rate of absorption as well as extent of absorption is actually dependent on form, everything gets dissolved immediately. So we don't have much problem. Here, major thing is the physicochemical property of the drug is the thing which is going to mainly affect the absorption of the drug and bioavailability of the drug along with physiological conditions. And there are little effects of excipients. For example, if you add a binder at higher concentration, dissolution may occur slowly, hence absorption may occur slowly, something like this. In case of controlled release dosage form, it is advantageous, as you might have seen in the earlier lectures. It is advantageous, but the problem is the absorption window is the thing which decides. In case of controlled release, release is controlled, and specifically if the drug is getting absorbed in the upper small intestine, duodenum specifically, let us assume. In that case, by the total contact time or total passing time of drug within the duodenum is very small, maybe around 10 to 15 minutes it will cross. But within now, once the dosage form comes out of the stomach, it passes through the upper intestine, and this passing through the upper intestine, which extent of absorption will become limited. Now, to increase the bioavailability of such type of drugs, the residence time of the controlled release formulation in the stomach. Actually, if the formulation is going to stay, if the dosage form is going to stay for a longer time in the stomach, then it is going to release the drug slowly, and then the drug will reach the upper small intestine, from where it will get absorbed quickly. So here we are, by making the or by increasing the residence time of the drug in the stomach, we are increasing the bioavailability of those drugs which are mainly being absorbed from the upper intestine, upper small intestine. Next is, usually these gastroretentive systems, they remain in the gastric region for many hours, and usually because of this, they are significantly going to prolong the gastric residence time of the drugs. Now, what this prolonged gastric retention is going to do? It is going to improve the bioavailability. It is going to reduce the drug wastage, because since we have made a controlled release formulation, there is reduced release, or the release is controlled, and immediately the drug gets absorbed. In the GIT, the drug is not going to be wasted. And this also improves the solubility, because we are selecting such drugs which are soluble in the stomach pH. And usually these gastroretentive controlled drug delivery systems, they have very high application for specifically for those drugs which have narrow absorption window. Either the drug gets absorbed in the stomach, or it may get absorbed in the upper small intestine. Only for those drugs, actually, this is the best suitable formulation. Marketed products. There is a market. Now, what are the factors that are going to control this gastric retention? First thing is, there are three major factors. First factor is the density of dosage form. Usually, we prefer to go for a dosage form which has a density less than that of gastric fluid, or less than that of, you can say, density of gastric fluid is almost equal to water. Hence, the dosage form should have a density less than water, or the density should be less than 1 gram per ml. It is less than water. So in such case, the dosage form, when it is administered with 250 ml of water, it floats. Instead of sinking into the water, it floats on the surface of the water. This is one way. But as the time progresses in this floating delivery systems also, slowly they absorb water and their density increases, and then they will sink into the fluid slowly. Then next thing is size and shape. Usually, if the dosage form is smaller, then it there is no effect of size on gastric emptying. Smaller things will simply get emptied. If it is a larger dosage form, it will not get emptied from the stomach into the intestine. It is going to remain until size reduction occurs. That means if the dosage form is larger in size, and if it maintains that larger size for a prolonged period in the stomach, then it is going to stay in the stomach. It cannot pass through the sphincter. So it will remain in the stomach only. And another thing is either ring shaped formulations or tetrahedron shaped or benzene shaped, such devices try to remain in the GIT. That is, size should be bigger, and specific shape of the dosage form is going to affect our gastro retention. Then presence of food or absence of food. Usually gastric emptying is affected by either presence of food or absence of food. If there is presence of food, gastric emptying is delayed. If any dosage form is administered after complete food, full, when the stomach is full, then usually this dosage form takes at least 4 to 4.5 hours to pass into intestine from stomach. Whereas if on empty stomach, if a dosage form is administered, then it takes less time. Within 1.5 to 2 hours, or at the most 3 hours, it will pass out into the intestine. So presence of food is one most important thing, because when we want to have the dosage form gastro-retentive, either it should be floating or it should be sticking. Both these things are possible only when the stomach is empty. If there is food, there is no chance of dosage form to float on it. So this presence or absence of food, and if the food is present, what type of food it is, they are going to influence the gastric emptying and also the absorption of drug. Now, what kind of drugs we can usually have, or which can be incorporated into gastroretentive dosage form? They are the drugs which act locally in the stomach. For example, we have anti-ulcer agents. Anything which cures the ulcers in the stomach, they need to be present in the stomach for a long time. There are other things like antacids and H. pylori treatment. Helicobacter pylori is a bacteria which is going to infect the mucous membrane of the stomach. So the drug, if you want to give antibiotic against this H. pylori, then it is supposed to work locally in the stomach. There is no need for this to get absorbed into systemic circulation. So any such drugs which need to be present locally can be made into a gastroretentive dosage form. Or the drugs that are primarily absorbed in the stomach, like amoxicillin. Here, its major site of absorption is stomach only. It will not get absorbed in the intestine. So in such case, we can go for gastroretentive formulation. Then drugs that are poorly soluble in alkaline pH, or in other words, if the drug is poorly soluble in alkaline pH, means the drug will get absorbed from the stomach. Hence, we need to, like furosemide, diazepam, verapamil, these are the drugs which get absorbed mainly from the stomach. Hence, they can be converted into GRDDS. And the drugs that absorbed rapidly from the upper GIT, like duodenum, like metronidazole, tetracycline, these are the drugs which get mainly absorbed in the duodenum. And the contact time in the duodenum is very less. Hence, we need to make gastroretentive formulations here. And the drugs that degrade in the colon, if the drugs enter simply into the intestine and then into colon, they get degraded, like ranitidine, metformin, they get degraded in the colon. Hence, there is loss of drug in the GIT, incomplete absorption and incomplete bioavailability. In such case, we can go for GRDDS. And then drugs that disturb normal colonic microbes, like antibiotics, higher concentrations of antibiotics in some treatments, they need to be absorbed from the stomach. Much of the antibiotic need not go into intestine, because all the intestinal and colonic bacteria will die. That leads to many other side effects like diarrhea and other things. So in such case, we can make GRDDS. Then drugs with a narrow absorption window, like cyclosporin and levodopa, they have very narrow absorption window, means in the upper GIT, upper intestine only, in the duodenum, within 15 minutes they need to get absorbed, and it's not possible to get absorbed 100% absorption in 15 minutes. In such case, we have to go for gastroretentive formulations. Then some drugs are there which are not suitable for GRDDS, like if the drugs don't have solubility in the acidic pH, like phenytoin, they won't get absorbed in the stomach. Hence, we don't have to make them into GRDDS. It will be, if we are selecting such drug for GRDDS, it will be simply a wastage. The drug will not get absorbed. Within the GIT, there is complete loss of drug. And the drugs that are unstable in gastric environment, if on exposure to gastric HCl, if the drug is getting degraded, like erythromycin, there is no meaning of making a gastric or gastroretentive drug delivery system. And the drugs that are intended for selective release in the colon, in that case, we can go for colonic delivery rather than gastroretentive delivery, like 5-amino-salicylic acid corticosteroids. Now, there are different approaches by which we can make gastroretentive drug delivery systems. First one is floating system. You can see the figures also. Floating system is one in which, because of the less density, the dosage form is floating in the stomach fluid, or while administering, if we have taken 250 ml of water, within that water the dosage form floats because it has less density. Second thing, high density system. They directly sink and go to the bottom of the stomach, and they try to remain there. They will not go out. Gastric emptying will not occur here, and they will try to remain. In the second figure, you can see that. Third thing, here this second one, high density system, can be used with high molecular weight polymers, which have very high density, and they can sink into the liquid and remain in the stomach for a long time. And third thing is swelling and expanding. These are water absorbing polymers, like hydrogels. If you make anything with a hydrogel means here usually hydrogels absorb water and they swell, but they should not undergo disintegration. Disintegration should not happen. That much care we have to take. We have to select a hydrogel polymer where absorption of water and swelling should occur, but not disintegration. So this will lead to increased size of the dosage form. So before absorption, the dosage form will be smaller, and after absorption, it becomes bigger and bigger, which you can see in the figure number 3. So because of that, it cannot go out into duodenum through the gastric wall, sphincter. So it will remain in the stomach for a long time. And then mucoadhesive and bioadhesive system. Actually, this here we have to use mucoadhesive polymer, but we have to take care that the mucoadhesive polymer should have highest mucoadhesion in stomach pH, because mucoadhesion is one which is again pH dependent. So we have to select a polymer which has mucoadhesion in the stomach pH. You can see the figure number 4. It will stick to the mucous membrane of the stomach and it will remain there for a very, very long time. Now, this is somewhat introductory thing I have given. Instead of going for other theoretical aspects, now I would like to directly present you the case studies. Actually, our group has developed many dosage forms, and we have published many papers concerned to this. I am here, out of those papers, I am presenting just 2 papers here, or 2 developed dosage forms. First one is development of amoxicillin loaded microballoons. These microballoons, why they are called microballoons? Because they are hollow microspheres, and there is slight air entrapment in the entrapped air is going to keep the microspheres floating for a long time. And here amoxicillin was used as a drug, because this we had developed for the treatment of H. pylori or H. pylori induced ulceration in the stomach. So in this case, what we did was microballoons were prepared by emulsion solvent diffusion method. In this case, the drug Dudrajit was the polymer used, and CAP. These were the 3 things which were used, and they were dissolved in a solvent mixture containing dichloromethane, ethanol, and isopropyl alcohol. All the 3, specifically dichloromethane, it evaporates very fast. And once it evaporates fast, it will make the microspheres hollow, and they become micro balloons. And this mixture was introduced. This dichloromethane, ethanol, isopropyl alcohol, Dudrajit, and CAP. The mixture was drop by drop introduced into polyvinyl alcohol, and the resultant solution was stirred for making the emulsion at 300 rpm using a digital stirrer for 1 hour. And the temperature was maintained at 40 degrees centigrade throughout this 1 hour. And here, 2 things, ethanol and isopropyl alcohol, they evaporate quickly. A polymeric shell will be developed in which dichloromethane was enclosed. And then after we formed microballoons, they were and after 1 hour, the microballoons were filtered and dried at 40 degrees to form inner gaseous phase by slow evaporation of dichloromethane. Actually, ethanol and isopropyl alcohol, they evaporated fast. Dichloromethane remained in the microspheres, and then that means the outer shell of the microsphere became hard, whereas internally it had dichloromethane. And when you dry it at 40 degrees centigrade, slowly dichloromethane also dries over a period of 1 hour, and then we get hollow microballoons. So in this case, we used central composite design for the QBD purpose. Here, independent variables were three things, three variables. Concentration of CAP was one of the major things which we observed during our preliminary batches. And then drug udrazit ratio was another important parameter which was affecting the size, shape, everything of the microballoons. And then ethanol, dichloromethane and isopropyl alcohol ratio. So these three were the independent variables, and then these independent variables were found to affect percentage yield, shape, particle size, percentage encapsulation, buoyancy of the microballoons, and release of drug from the microballoons. They were affected by the three independent variables. So here these were the number of batches. I think around 15 batches we prepared at different concentrations of cap, udrazit and dichloromethane. All the three factors have been shown here at 0 level and +1 level. One increased, one decreased. And -A plus A, they are the axial points. And actually this whole thing was done using Design Expert software. And once this was done, then those many batches were prepared and then they were evaluated. The evaluation was done for yield. How much is the yield of microspheres? And then particle size analysis of the developed microballoons, and then buoyancy, whether these microballoons are going to stay buoyant, they are able to float, how long encapsulated into these microballoons, and then morphology, surface characteristics of these microballoons, and then X-ray diffraction was done. Then if there is any drug, polymer or solvent interactions, we did study to find out that also, and then drug release, and then at the end in vitro anti-H. pylori activity was done. So here all the parameters, the values of all the parameters have been shown here for all the developed batches. Like all the micro balloons had spherical shape, mean particle size. Highest was, you can see red colored readings, lowest was 31 and highest was 47. All these other batches were within this range. And then percentage yield was varying from between 30 to 82%. And in three cases, you can see here AMX234, microballoons were not formed at all. So those three batches have remained empty. And then buoyancy, percentage, how much percentage of microballoons remain floating. For this purpose, a specific gastric, simulated gastric fluid was taken, and then a known weight of microballoons were put on the surface of it slowly. And then they were allowed to remain as such. And then the time taken by them over a period, like let us say for around 3 hours, this study was continued, and at the end of 3 hours, how much microballoons are still floating. They were taken out and then dried and weighed. That means initially we know the weight, finally we know the weight of microballoons. Then percentage buoyancy was calculated from these. And then drug encapsulation. A method was developed to find out the encapsulation of drugs, and it was found that between 56 to 93% the drug encapsulation was found in this range. And when, as we were talking about central composite design, response surface method, it generates, the software generates different quadratic equations. For yield, a quadratic equation was developed. Then mean particle size had another quadratic equation, encapsulation efficiency, buoyancy, and cumulative drug release. All the equations are shown here. And then regression coefficient and correlation coefficient values of different response variables are shown in this table. You can see for independent and mean particle size, yield, buoyancy, encapsulation, and cumulative drug release. Now, how much linearly these independent variables are going to are, in other words, what is the linearity? For example, if you increase the independent variable, and then whether the dependent variable is going to linearly change its value or not. That was found out. You can see in the bottom two rows, R square and adjusted R square values are shown here, which shows that it is okay. And then we also did actual and predicted values. Predicted values tables are available, and then actual values we have determined. For all the parameters, it was done. And then based on these, response surface plots were drawn. Okay, the first column is showing effect of CAP, Udrazit, and ethanol on the yield of microballoons. And second one is showing same effect on the particle size. Third is showing on the encapsulation efficiency. And then fourth is showing buoyancy, effect of all these, combined effect of all these independent variables on each parameter. And fifth column is showing you the effect of combined effect of all these things on cumulative drug release. Then we did X-ray diffraction studies. Pure amoxicillin showed different characteristic peaks, but in the microballoons, all these peaks were disappearing. Means the crystalline structure of the drug got converted into amorphous structure. That was the reason all the peaks were missing in the microballoon. Then you can see here surface characters and internal characters. So in the first one, you can see the surface character, enlarged one, and second is also same, and the right corner one that shows a section of the microballoon showing the internal portion of it. Okay, so here you can see that in the picture B also you can see the surface is smooth, and in the picture A, first one, the left bottom one, where you can see the surface is smooth, it is non-porous. Okay, and internal core, in the third picture you can see internal core is porous, external surface is non-porous. And then using IR peak matching, drug polymer interaction study was carried out, and we found there is no interaction between polymers and the drug. And then you can see here the in vitro dissolution profiles in pH 1.2. Here for around 500 minutes the whole study was carried out. At different time intervals, samples were taken, they were analyzed, and the graphs were plotted. Here, to find out the mechanism of release, we used different equations, like Course-Meyer-Peppas equation was used. That is log-log plots, log percentage release against log time. For all the batches, you can see here, the R square values are 0.92 to 0.99. Means the thing is, there is a, it means it is a straight line. The Peppas plots are straight line. Straight line in the sense, here it means that the drug release is following zero order kinetics, and it is diffusion controlled, which is shown by the n values of the Peppas plots. And also to differentiate between the batches, ANOVA was carried out on the release profile. You can see the result of that ANOVA values. And then finally, in vitro anti-H. pylori activity was carried out, and actually this was done on the cultures. On the cell line, H. pylori infection was done, and then these microballoons were used along with pure amoxicillin. So you can see in case of pure amoxicillin, MIC is 10, and in case of the optimized formulation, minimum inhibitory concentration is 20 microgram per ml. And in case of, you can see here in the time row, the duration of action. So for a long time, it was showing proper effect. So for example, you can see till 36 hours, the H. pylori were absent, and then the growth of H. pylori was inhibited. Whereas after 48, 60, 72, and 84 hours, again the growth started, because by the time over a period of 36 hours, the drug is finished in the microballoons. Around 72 hours in case of amoxicillin, 36 hours, and in case of optimized formulation, up to 72 hours. It's a very long time. There was no growth. This was first case. The second case is development and evaluation of floating beads using gliclazide as a drug. Gliclazide is a anti-diabetic drug, oral hypoglycemic. Here it has a specific problem that it gets absorbed selectively from the duodenum only. So it does not get sufficient time for complete absorption. Hence, incomplete absorption of the drug is a most common problem with this specific drug in the conventional formulations. So here, for the preparation of these gas generating floating beads, this is another technology where if you want to keep the thing floating, either it should be hollow or it should generate a gas. So here for the gas generation was the second technique used to keep the beads floating. Here the preparation of beads was done using different polymers like sodium alginate in combination with HPMC, gelatin or pectin. At 9:1 ratio was prepared in distilled water, and then calcium carbonate was added to this solution from 0.25:1 or 1.5 to 1. That is the gas forming agent, and again with alginate ratio was used, and then this polymer solution 250 m to this solution we added the drug, and then it was dispersed well, and then the mixture was kept for 4 hours to remove any air bubbles, because this is another important point, because if there are air bubbles in the formulation, it will float, but these air bubbles are going to create problem in the drug release. Hence we need to remove all the air bubbles, and then once the air bubbles were removed, then the resulting solution was dropped into 1% calcium chloride solution from a height of 5 centimeter through a syringe at 55 drops per minute rate. And then as the beads were formed, they were collected. Usually once it falls into calcium chloride, normally hardening of alginate will occur, and then the beads become hard by the time they reach the bottom of the measuring jar, and they were collected later, and then they were washed once or twice with distilled water to remove excess cross-linking agent which is present sticking on the surface, and then they were dried overnight at 30 degrees centigrade, and these were evaluated for particle size, morphology, yield, incorporation efficiency, buoyancy, swelling, because both these systems were developed for the purpose of floating. Hence, buoyancy becomes important thing here. And then swelling was found, because in case of alginate HPMC, naturally we expect swelling. They absorb water and they swell. Both of them have swelling property, so swelling was also done. And then FTIR spectroscopy was done to determine if there is any interaction, and then analysis of thermal behavior, that is the DSC was done also to find out interaction between drug and polymer. And then diffraction was done to find out it is whether the drug is in crystalline or amorphous form. After X-ray diffraction, in vitro drug release was done, and then in diabetic rats, the in vivo study was also carried out. So here also a number of formulations were done with sodium alginate. Four batches were with sodium alginate pectin, 4 batches were with sodium alginate gelatin, and 4 batches sodium alginate HPMC. So totally there were 12 batches, and then calcium carbonate sodium alginate ratio were used, 0.25:1, 0.5:1, 1:1, 1.5:1. These were the 4 ratios. And then the surface diameter of the dried beads were carried out using optical microscopy, and it is found that the range was between 730 to 890 micrometers, average particle size. The surface characteristics here, the scanning electron micrographs are showing clearly. The first two are showing alginate gelatin beads, second two are showing alginate and pectin beads, third two are showing the alginate and HPMC beads. And here you can see HPMC beads had smoothest possible surface, whereas alginate pectin beads had rough surface, and alginate gelatin beads had still rougher surface. Or you can see roughest surface was found with alginate pectin combination. Then different formulation variables and their effects, like on flotation property, how long it is going to remain floating, then percentage yield, then we also calculated floating time, and then percentage flotation after 4 hours and after 8 hours. At the end of 4 hours, how much percentage of the beads put are still floating, and at the end of 8 hours, how much percentage of the drugs are beads are floating. It has been found out. And then drug incorporation efficiency was also calculated. 59 to 85% of drug was found to be incorporated into these beads. Okay, then compatibility studies. Actually, the drug and polymers did not show any interaction as per the IR spectra, and in all the cases you can see with DSC thermograms also similar results. There was no incompatibility because the endotherm representation was retained in all the formulations, that is formulations with gelatin, HPMC and pectin. And in case of X-ray diffraction study, the pure drug had lot of peaks. In all the formulations, you don't find many of those peaks. That it shows that in some formulations the drug was partially converted into amorphous, and then in some formulation some peaks are visible, like in the formulation FAP4 you can see some of the peaks, means it is partial conversion of crystalline to amorphous. In case of Pectin-based beads, it is not crystalline at all. And in alginate gelatin, partial crystallization and partial conversion of amorphous. And then in vitro dissolution profiles were determined for all the batches, all the 12 batches, and USP23 apparatus with paddle type 2 apparatus was used, and 5 ml samples were taken at different time interval, and they were UV absorbance was found out at 228 nanometer. Actually, again in this case also, the R-square values of all the plots were 0.9 and above, indicating that all these release graphs are nearly straight lines, means they may be following zero order kinetics. Hence, again here also we went for Peppas plots, log plots, and all these Peppas plots were found to be straight lines. They were linear, and here also at pH 1.2 and at pH 1.8 Peppas plots were drawn, and everywhere you can see the Peppas plots had R-square value of 0.98 and 99, indicating linearity, and also 0.68 to 0.53 to 0.68 is the slope value of these Peppas plots here. Means the formulations had n values between 0.5 and 1. Means it is Fickian diffusion with swelling. Swelling in the sense because the polymers which we have used, they are meant for swelling. Alginate has a swelling property. HPMC also has swelling property. Hence, it is between 0.5 and 1 only is supposed to be the slope value of the Course-Meyer-Peppas plots. Then similarity and dissimilarity factors were also found out for all these. Similarity factor values were greater than 50, indicating that all the developed formulations had almost similar release profile. Here usually in case of F2, if the values are between 50 and 100, we consider it as similar, and F1 should be near 0 to consider it as dissimilar. But here the F2 values were between 50 and 100. So the release profiles were similar. Here then ANOVA was done on the release profiles to find out whether this F1, F2 values, whatever we have calculated, they are really correct or is there anything wrong. It was found to be right. Then anti-diabetic studies were done. Diabetes was induced with the help of streptozotocin in the rats, and then at different doses of these developed formulations along with pure drug were administered, and then you can see the comparative decrease in the blood glucose level. Here diet induced obese mice were used after single dose oral administration of the vehicle, pure glycoside and formulation. So here you can see in the second figure effect of vehicle, pure glycoside and formulation on percentage reduction in the blood glucose level. Actually, comparative in vivo, first figure gives you the comparative in vivo profile, that is blood glucose level, and how much reduction has occurred, that is being shown in the second figure. And then effect of treatments on non-fasting blood glucose levels is given in the first figure, and here effect of treatments on fasting blood glucose levels. So we got good, all these figures show that the antidiabetic activity is better with the formulation rather than with pure drug. Here, why it is so? When you administer pure drug, the drug does not get sufficient time for absorption. That means it leads to incomplete absorption of the drugs. But here in case of gastroretentive formulation, the drug is going to remain in the stomach for a very long time, because of which there is better absorption and there is better pharmacological activity. Gastroretentive drug delivery systems, they have emerged as a good approach for controlled release delivery of drugs that exhibit a narrow absorption window. This is most important thing. And all these drug delivery systems, they have their own advantages and drawbacks, like all other drug delivery system. So if you want to design a successful gastroretentive drug delivery system, you have to consider physicochemical property of the drug, physiological events in the GIT, formulation strategies, and correct combination of drug and excipient. Then only you will get a successful formulation. Otherwise, your formulation will not be a successful thing. Thank you. If there are any questions, we can. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir,
Thank you.
for such a knowledgeable talk on gastroretentive drug delivery system, as which is one of the best system in which retention time is also low. More retention time is there, and there are many people has questions. I got in a personal chat. Can you please?
Yeah.
Can you please let us know that uh, what will be the focused view on current state and future perspective on gastroretentive drug delivery system?
Actually, gastroretentive drug delivery system, when you talk about future prospects of it, I don't think it has much wider applicability and other things, because the type of drugs which we select are limited, and the present technologies with which we can make all these, that is also limited. Hence, the scope of this GRDDS is limited. I can't say that it has very wide scope, excellent and all. I don't say that, because selection of selection of polymers is also limited. What kind? Those drugs get absorbed in are the best drugs.
Sir, please unmute.
Yeah.
Hello.
That is the limited lot of other problems. So our aim was to reduce the dose. So with the help of metronidazole, we took metronidazole as the drug with natural polymer, unidirectional release. Here, just you have to stick the formulation. A small piece of film can be stuck directly onto the gum where there is periodontitis, and it contained just 2.5 mg drug. So we were able to reduce the dose from 2 gram to 7.5 mg per day.
Wow,
Which
that's good.
was
That would be
locally,
a novel approach.
definitely. And third thing is one polymeric prodrug which we have developed. In this case, usually for polymeric products, we go for synthetic polymers. Majority of the polymeric products reported have synthetic polymers, but here our patent describes use of almond gum as a natural polymer for development of polymeric products for the betterment of therapy of typhoid. So this is one of the significant patent what I can say. It is just maybe 3-4 months before it is published in the patent journal. Now the reviewing has to be done, or we have to apply for the reviewing of the patent.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Basuraj, sir, welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Priti, and good morning,
Good
Dr.
morning.
Hello,
Priti. Priti, ma'am, can I ask one question? I have one.
Yeah, sure,
Yes.
you can join us. It's our pleasure. You can join us.
Thank you, Giriraj.
Thank you,
Nice
sir.
to see you after a long time. Nice presentation. I have one, sorry to, I wanted to know demerits of gastroretentive drug delivery system. What are the demerits? If it is, where you face this, still after developing dosage form, still you feel, okay, this is my problem or challenge.
Sir, they have many demerits. It is not one or two. The problem is we are unnecessarily exposing the stomach for a long time. First thing. Second thing, if you are specifically with some 2-3 dosage forms which we developed, they were all floating dosage forms. And here the demerit is, since the dosage form is floating, the patient cannot take food because it will submerge the formulation. How long you can keep the patient on empty stomach? This is a big problem. Actually, with all gastroretentive formulations, if they are mucoadhesive, it's okay. Otherwise, if they are based on floating or if they are based on size and other things, then they may also obstruct gastric emptying of the food. If because of the dosage form, gastric emptying of the food may also get obstructed. So these are some of the problems, and because of this only, I feel it has limited scope.
Yeah, thanks. And along with, I think your antacid can be preferred for this gastroretentive drug delivery. Along with antacid, do you feel any other active ingredient is advisable with this doses form?
Sir, specifically, as the scope is limited, either we are going to use any antacid can be used. Specifically, non-systemic antacids are better, but in case of non-systemic antacids, they are going to do neutralization of gastric acid immediately. There is no need of going for any controlled release, and then gastroretentive delivery systems, they are totally wastage. And if it is systemic antacid, then is it necessary, since it is working systemically, what is the fun of developing GRDDS? You can give either simple conventional formulation or as injection or something, that will be better, simplest thing, rather than developing a GRDDS. Whereas we found that gliclazide was one of the drug which we found most suitable because it gets absorbed only from the duodenum. And there are many other drugs, maybe limited number, but still we have many drugs which get absorbed only in the duodenum, and they can be made into gastroretentive formulations, but still we have that question as it is, what is the exact scope of it? It increases the formulation cost and variables are more. If it is a conventional or if it is a coated tablet or something like that, it is cheaper. For if we think of industry level, then it becomes actually a loss, or it is going to increase the cost too much that the industry or the patient may not be able to afford it. So these are some of the problems which are associated with these formulations.
I'm feeling to interact more and more, but I'm limited. I'm sorry. Yeah, good question. And last one more, Giriraj. In this case, can we go ahead for prebiotic and what is it? Probiotics. Probiotics can be advisable for this.
Probiotics can be, sir, because they are going to remain in the GIT only. They are not being absorbed. So it is possible to go for probiotics.
That can be.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it possible with antacid also? It can be any reported article. Do you have any experience?
There are some papers
exposure?
with antacids also, sir.
Uh-huh.
Few papers are there, but actually I did not try it because actually our aim was H. pylori treatment. So we tried with antibiotic rather than antacid.
Okay. Thank you, Giriraj. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Preeti ma'am, providing platform to interact.
It's our pleasure, sir. And
Thank you.
even I have a work on that, the gastroretentive drug delivery. It's a bilayer tablet. It's floating bilayer tablet on hypertensive drug, antihypertensive. It's metoprolol tartrate.
Yeah.
So that one layer is an immediate release, and other will be sustained one. So we'll get a better result when we work on that formulation. So I have next question is that can we convert this microformulation to tablet and the capsule form?
We can fill it in the capsule. That's no problem. Absolutely, we can do it.
Okay.
But if you compress it into tablet, then the structure, hollow structure of microspheres may get broken, and that can lead to issues. It will lose its structure and it may lose its buoyancy and all other properties. But if you fill in the capsule, it's fine.
Okay. Okay. So can we load two drug as a combination therapy? Even I have tried, but I'm not getting.
It can be two different formulations can be made and they can be mixed together. That is the only way. You can't mix the drug and fill in one formulation. Two
Okay.
different formulations can be done.
Okay. One more last question, sir.
Yes.
I have received. Is there a difference between floating tablets and micro balloons, and how advantage over it, gastroretentive floating tablets?
Floating tablets actually because of they have two things as advantage. One is they are floating, second is their size. But the thing is they should not disintegrate. As long as the tablet doesn't disintegrate, it has advantage over the micro balloons, because micro balloons they are in micrometer size, and because of their micrometer size only sometimes they quickly. Gastric emptying will occur sometimes. But if as long as these microbeads are floating, they remain in the stomach. But if the patient consumes something else, the moment the patient consumes food, then gastric emptying begins. These
That is
microballoons
the
will be
major
sent out.
challenge we have.
Yes, that is the biggest problem. You can't keep the patient hungry all day.
Really. Uh, thank you, sir. Such a wonderful,
Thank you.
knowledgeable session you have spared. One more question I have received.
Mhm.
So can we use HPMC instead of cellulose acetate phthalate in gastrointestinal tablet coating?
We can use, because in second formulation what we have
Cap,
done is
may,
HPMC only.
ob-
In the first formulation we had used cap.
yeah, the
In the second one we had used HPMC, pectin, gelatin was used along
gelatin.
with sodium alginate.
Cap is one of the best option we can use for the
Cap is one of the best
intestine.
option for microspheres, but for
Okay.
other formulations like beads, tablets and other things, instead of cap, better to go for HPMC,
HPMC,
because it is
definitely.
more biocompatible than CAP. Because phthalates are always carcinogenic. If they are in limited quantity, it's better.
No, I'm just talking for the intestinal drug. If there will be a targeted is intestine, for that it will be better cap.
Yeah, that is better.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And what I just wanted to know what message you wanted to share to all the participants. Hello, hello. It is the sign of maturity when you demonstrate. respected Dr. G.T. Kulkarni, Professor, Joint Head, Amity University, Department of Pharmacy, and our most valued invited guests, participants, it's my privilege and honor to present a vote of thanks. On this occasion, I, Preeti Tagde, President, Pharmaceutical Royal International Society, extend my vote of thanks to all the resource person, Dr. Basar Raoji, Dr. Hima Chaudhary, Dr. Bapi, Dr. N. Ganesh, myself, Dr. G.T. Kulkarni, for sharing a valuable session on this 4-day advanced training program. I would like to thank our moderator, Ms. Netravati P, for moderating our session and for gracing your important time and sharing with us. And I would like to say, as in this platform, we have covered all the aspects. We have tried to cover maximum topics in a 4 days and hope this advanced training program will give a best as per as my possible